Our guest this morning is called Sylvia Morwabe. Sylvia is a program manager at an organization called Crime C Poa. Crime C Poa. Sylvia, welcome to Kenya's Biggest Conversation.
Thank you, Eric.
It's good to have you. That is the hot seat, but because you work with the community, so it's not going to be at you hot. It's just relatively warm.
Okay.
It's good to have you. Tell us about Crime C Poa. What is it all about?
Okay, thank you, Eric. It's good to be here this morning. So Crime CPOA is just a youth-centric organization. So we focus on youth who we categorize largely as vulnerable and at risk. And our whole aim is to be able to empower them, to be able to mentor them so that they can be able to get out of crime and just a life of crime. So we do this through various programs with the aim of informing, reforming, and transforming. So our community outreach program goes to the schools, goes to the prisons, goes to just communities to be able to talk to this youth, to be able to mentor them through life skills, to be able to encourage them so that they can be able to have both a behavior and attitude change. We don't just want you to change your behavior and stop making the decisions that are getting you into trouble, but we want your attitude to change as well. We also have our Access to Justice wing, which now goes on to teach these communities and the youth the law, because we realize in a lot of instances, a lot of people come into conflict with the law, not because of any other thing, but because they don't know what the law says, and you will never plead ignorance and expect that to absolve you from any responsibility. So we have our Access to Justice wing that goes to teach the communities the law, their rights and their responsibilities, and how to respond in such situations. And then our last wing is our Social Enterprise wing. So after we have mentored you, after we have taught you all these things, after we've taught you the law, what skills can we empower you with so that you can be able to make a living for yourself, you can be able to support yourself and your family. So just bring that whole the holistic approach in dealing with the youth. So we're just giving access to opportunities, access to justice, access to information. Yes.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, it is.
How do you determine who to pass this delightful information to? How do you decide where you're going to and why it is that they are more deserved than perhaps some other part of the country and some other group?
Okay. So actually, when Crime CPOA began in prison, in committee actually. So the vision of our founder, at that point our founder had been wrongfully incarcerated, so he was at committee, and he realized that the large number of new inmates that were coming in every day were youth, just kids between the ages of 18 and 20. And he had it upon his heart to be able to, how can we get to these kids so that they do not end up here? So as we started there, and then eventually now when he came out, and it's just going to those areas where most of these children were coming from. That's how we had started. Now, through the years, how we have grown is as we go into our community, as we meet the need in that community, we're able to get other areas. For example, we have recently, over the last 2 years as COVID has hit, as we went to the community just to do a bit of COVID relief, we are able to interact with the community and get to understand the needs that they are and see where our intervention is needed. So we have managed to expand to areas like Kisumu. Right now we're in Kisumu, we are in Nakuru, we are in areas of Kajiado around Rongai. As we interact in the communities and with the just in the schools and the areas that we are, just starting with a small circle of influence where our office is, then in prison, then we're able to get to understand other areas that are in need of these services, that we are seeing just the crime rates maybe increasing. We are seeing high rates of for example, recently in Kajiado, we've seen that there's been a lot of cases of defilement, a lot of cases of sexual and gender-based violence, and we are able now to go into those areas to try and bring in intervention to deal with that.
How would you
Go ahead, please.
How would you categorize crime in terms of levels among young people in the areas in which you are, in scale of 1 to 5, for example, 5 being the worst?
It varies. So, and it varies in type and in
Severity.
the level, severity, yes. So, for example, let me start with an area like Kisumu. We started in Kisumu, I think it was sometime last year. And this time it was a few youth who had heard about Crime Sipua who reached out and they're like, in our area, what's the issues we've had is we have a lot of, not even gangs, we've had a lot of incidences where we have theft. We have, and this is done by students who are students during the day, and then in the evening they're breaking houses. Yes, and just such. So they would say at that point their biggest need was to deal with, the housebreaking, the phone snatching, and we've realized it's among the school-going kids. So how do we intervene with that? That I would have said maybe at that point the severity was around 4 to 5. Then as we continue going with interventions, as we continue to get these kids before it gets worse, we have seen instances where it has reduced. In areas like Rongai, for example, in Kajiado County in general, in the recent we've been seeing a lot of cases where they have been coming to our office. We have a resource center in Rongai. People are just coming and like, there was a rape case, there was a defilement case, there was all this gender-based violence. We've done a couple of community forums there to be able to address such issues. And that is one of the crimes that had that area. At this point, I would say is 5. That we are trying to work on to reduce so that we get to a point where it's our main vision is to get to a place where we have a crime-free society.
Right.
So we're just trying to put in the building blocks to be able to reduce it as the time goes on. Yes.
Even as you say, so establish that there is crime.
Yes.
Establish that there are people who are coming forward to say, this is what. So what are the interventions? Because somebody who's a student during the day has something that they're doing.
Yes.
And then is a thief at night, a thug at night. I'm interested as to what are the interventions that you would bring about to have these young people stop this?
Very good question, Du. So one of the methodologies that we use, that we have been using is, for example, I mentioned we have a community outreach program. So through our community outreach and access to justice most of the time, we get into the community and start by having that conversation. Let's have the conversation. Let's sit down with the various stakeholders, not just the community, the parents and the children. Let's sit down with the various players in the criminal justice system. So in each of our communities, you'd find we have maybe a representative from the National Police, we have a representative from the DPP, we have a representative, depending on what we're discussing on that day, from the judiciary, we have a representative from, if we're dealing with SGB, we have a representative, from the gender office. We're able to sit down, first of all, let's identify where the problem is.
Yeah.
Why is it that crime rates are increasing? What is it that is causing this student who has something to do to leave class and go to steal? Is it just because they feel that, okay, it's peer pressure, I want to look macho, so I'm doing it not because I need it, but because I feel it's cool to do it? So once we are able to identify what the issue is that is causing the people to get into it, then we're able to work with the community to find the solution. So let's say we are finding, okay, the issue is peer pressure. You want to be able to look cool. You think that is what will make you look cool. How can we be able to, let's work around it. There are other ways, because as I mentioned, behavior and attitude change. So your behavior is just being affected by your attitude. So can we be able to work on an attitude change in the sense that show you the avenues that are different, that are better for you. When we find it's instances where you're engaging in crime because you're trying to just put food on the table for yourself and your family. Different interventions are like, okay, so we've realized this is a problem. So we work with the community, like, okay, it's opportunities to job, opportunities to access to opportunities that you do not have. How can we link you maybe with people with the skills that you have so that you can have something to do? If it's skills that you don't have, can we train you in those skills that will help you to be able to have something different to do, to be able to get to earn a living and get out of crime? Just so it's usually that we try and sit down, because we don't want to come in like we know it all. We want to come and talk to the community. Let's find out where the problem is, what the cause is, and then let's make the solution based on what the issue is.
Give us a case study of a community where you went in and you found out the various reasons why the youth are engaging in crime and what you did, what solutions you came up with together with the community, as you say.
Okay. Let me think. At the top of my head, I'll use again Kisumu.
Okay.
So as I mentioned before, Kisumu is where we're actually still working. It's still ongoing. So the first instance we had in Kisumu, we had youth from 3 different areas. Right now we're in 3 different areas. We have Obunga, Nyalenda, and Manyata, who reached out, and like the crime rates, especially during COVID, have skyrocketed. So this is the issue we are having at the moment, and we have realized that it's kids. So what do we do? So we sat down with the youth. We got to understand their issue. Then the first thing that we did was school intervention. So we went to the various areas and the various schools that maybe we were thinking might be the hotbeds. So got the permission, got to be able to come to the schools just to talk to the kids and to mentor the kids, get to understand where they're coming from. We get to understand what the issues are. In some instances, we're finding maybe the issue is drugs. We're finding that some instances, maybe they're just trying to get something home. Some instances, it's just family background. So we've been managing, and we're still doing it actually, just having that life skills training with the kids in school. Another thing that we continue to as we are talking to the kids in school, earlier on in this year, we had a forum early in February, which was just a criminal justice accountability. So we sat down with now their parents, the stakeholders. We sat down, we had representatives from the DPP, representatives from the police, from the judiciary, to have the conversation. We're like, this is what is happening at the moment. Crime has increased. We're in the process of trying to reduce that. This is the issues that have been brought down. We are now listening to what the issues are talking. We even had boda members there. We had Matatu sector. We just be able to sit down as a community and discuss this. Let's find out, okay, these are the issues that we have faced. These are the issues we're having with maybe the police. The police is telling us these are the issues we're having with the community. How can we collaborate so that we are able to deal with it? So starting that conversation.
What are the main issues? What are the main cause that was? What was the main reason that was leading these kids, as you call them, to crime?
Okay. So some of the, as I mentioned, some of the reasons that we've gotten, for example, and I remember one of these days we did our wellness officer tells us it's called art therapy, where you just give the kids a chance just to draw what it is that you think is the problem, and then we can be able to see from that. And we've seen some kids who are able to draw and say, okay, I do this, maybe I engage in drugs, or I sell drugs because my parents give me that to sell, because that's how my fees is supposed to be raised, for example. Or we don't have food at home sometimes, so I need to get money. So once I get from school, we can't sleep hungry, so I'm trying to get that. Sometimes it's those ones of, it's just it looks like everyone is doing it, not so. But that's some of the reasons. That's from the student side, for example. We've had other instances where I wouldn't say, did they really give the reason? Where at that point, as I've said, we had the chairman of the Boda Association there in Kondele saying that you've seen instances where they are used by other people. Like at that point, we are saying boda, and I know in the last couple of weeks, boda have been on the spotlight, and they're like, boda, it's just that a lot of people want to use them, and they've seen the instances where they are used is because maybe you have someone who's young, who's new in the industry, and someone is promising you quick money, and they're like, let me make that quick money. I don't care really what the other person is doing. So if we have noticing that those are the gaps, and these are gaps that having the stakeholders in that meeting makes it easier for them to also realize, okay, this is where the community is. This is where we can collaborate, because part of the National Police Service mandate is we have the community policing wing. And the community policing is just to help us to be able to work as communities with the police to be able to make our communities safer for everyone. I don't want to be able to walk out there and not feel safe. I want to be able to walk out and feel like, okay, I don't have to watch my back. I don't have to always make sure my phone is tucked into the deepest part of my bag. But now having those conversations is the start. And we believe that as we continue with these conversations, as we continue involving the stakeholders, as we continue, that's a case study that I believe coming back in a couple of weeks, in a couple of months, we should be able to have seen significant growth, because we've already started seeing it. Right now,
what
just
I'm not
last
getting,
week,
sorry, Sylvia, what I'm not getting
okay.
is the different groups of youth
Yes.
have raised their issues.
Yes.
There are those who are in school and they're saying the reasons why they are getting into crime.
Yes.
There are those who are out of school and they're in some form of business, whether they're motorbike riders, and they're telling you why they're getting into crime. So were you able then to map and say these are the main areas that we need to focus on, and what exactly are you doing? For example, with the school-going children, what exactly are you doing to get them out of crime?
Okay. Let me see if I can clarify it a little better. Okay.
So taking the example of the kids who said, it's because my parents expect me to go and sell the drugs because that's how we make our living. Or I need to supplement our domestic income so that we can earn a living. And the others. So what are you doing? What interventions are you coming up with to get them off crime?
Okay. So, using that example, so one of the things that we've also tried to do with that is, other than the mentorship that we do, just the life skills mentorship that we're trying to talk to them to be able to counsel them, because we also have a team of psychologists that help us through that, is also to involve the parents in the process. Because we can talk to the kids, we can try and mentor the kids, might be able to see the sense in it. But if the situation back home doesn't change, that would have been doing zero work. So one of the interventions that we try to do is also involve the parents. So after we've gotten that, I know in one of the schools that we've worked in, here in Nairobi, for example, we're able to sit down, bring the parents on a specific day, sit down and like, okay, these are the issues that your children are facing. These are the issues that they've said are causing them either to crime or into drugs and all this other antisocial behavior. And these are the contributing factors that they have given. And the contributing factors include you guys. So can we work together? Because if it doesn't change with you, then your kids will not see that. So our interventions are trying to be as community based as possible. So we get in, let's notice the problem. Let's involve whoever is part of the problem to find the solution to the problem and to deal with that problem. So as we speak to the parents, we're able to counsel them as well. And we are hoping, because at the end of the day, there's only so much we can do. I can be able to come and talk and make all that changes. But for it to work, we need to have the goodwill
Of everybody.
I'm
just getting a sense that the things that you're bringing to the fore, even as you have all these conversations, are not alien to the community.
Sure.
The members of that community already know these are our kids. This is so and so. This is what they do. They're the ones who are robbing us,
Yes.
and they can also tell the reason why this child is ending up where they are. They can tell. I mean, the folks are not able to afford to put a meal on the table, so these kids are then out there. Or the folks are busy throughout the day. They're not able to actually monitor what the child is doing. So the child has got into bad company. Or huyu mama yake na baba yake wanauza bangi, and that's why this kid is selling bangi. It's coming from mama yake. So there's nothing new really in terms of the community and getting to understand the reasons that their youth are getting involved in crime. So that's what I was asking. So what exactly, after you get to understand, because now you're the stranger in this conversation, what interventions do you support the community to eradicate or to reduce the incidences of crime or the reasons why the people are getting involved in crime?
Okay. I mentioned at the beginning that we have what we call our social enterprise wing. So with our social enterprise wing, which is now what is trying to give you an alternative to give you that access to opportunities. So one of those, I know we've had, like one of our beneficiaries, we had like a digital livelihoods class. So if it's to empower you with skills, to work on the computer, to be able to just have that digital literacy. And I know like one of our very first beneficiaries was able to get to a point where she finished that just basic computer with us. She was able to move to DDD, then to Moringa, graduated from Akira Chicks, I think, towards the end of this year. And now she's able to support her family. She's able to just earn that living and be able to live comfortably. So one of the things is now, okay, it's the access to opportunities that you don't have. Can we are able to link you up or give you those skills to be able to get you that opportunity? One of the things that we also do, for example, if just various skills, even when you go, because we don't just work in the community, we also work in the prisons. So teaching them the skills. For example, right now we've been teaching people on just to make soap, because you can be able to make that soap, you can be able to sell it to get that, to earn that living. We're giving you alternatives to that life of crime. We don't want, okay, as you've said, those are things that are known. It's not an alien conversation on, okay, this is the issue, it's just maybe unique to the different different community groups. But the intervention is now, okay, now that's the access you need. Others, if it's just you need to go to school, for example, you want to go to school and you don't have can we be able to get you sponsorship? Can we be able to link you up with partners who can be able to get you through school so that you can be able to advance your novel to, again, support yourself. So just giving all that.
I'm keen on understanding this.
Yes, Uti.
The conversation was about getting some of these young people to actually understand the law.
Yes.
And even as you said it, I was thinking, there's so much in the law. What do you select as being the key ingredients in the curriculum, if you have a curriculum, for training these people, and why do you select those aspects of the law?
Okay.
And I also want to know how you go about training people to understand the law and the ramifications of it. Because you can hear it, you can be taught, but internalizing it is a different matter. And what we're discussing here seems to be internalizing it so that it's part of the behavior change that you hope to see.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you, Siti, for that. So, as just that access to justice, we have a paralegal training. So with the paralegal training, what the aim is...
Who do you train?
Community members. So
How do you choose them?
So we are able to... we go through like vetting process. So we are within the youth groups, so within the communities rather than that we work with, we're able to send out an application for just looking for specific criteria. We want people who are already involved in the community work, who are at least have a certain level of education, who are just have shown that interest in being able to help their community, for example.
Do you also consider how acceptable these people are to the community?
Yes.
It's a criteria you look for.
Yes, because we don't want. I don't want to train Sylvia, and Sylvia is one of those people in the community who no one listens to, for example, so that they look at me and they have already rejected the message because it's coming from Sylvia.
Okay.
So having that in mind, as you've asked about a curriculum, so Sharia, we have under our Access to Justice program, we have what we call Sharia Mashinani, which is a project that we envisioned together with Strathmore University Law School back in 2019, which was just to be able to train those community paralegals to help with disseminating that legal information to the ground. So we started with our first cohort who were trained at Strathmore. We had worked on a curriculum together. We trained them from Kibra. That was in 2019. And then as we have gone through the years, I don't know how many, a lot of Kenyans are not familiar with National Paralegal Society of Kenya. So yes, there is a National Paralegal Society of Kenya.
There is,
Yes,
okay.
Yes, there is.
And who is allowed to join?
So National Paralegal Society of Kenya is currently like a group of CSOs who...
CSO?
Civil society organizations. Yes, civil society organizations who are keen in just making justice accessible to the mashinani, let me just put it like that, to the grassroots levels, to as far as they can go. So under the National Paralegal Society, we have paralegals who have been trained. Right now it has the key organizations that started the society are Legal Resources Foundation, ICJ Kenya, Kituo cha Sheria, and the other one is SECPJ. I've forgotten the full name. I'll tell you in a minute. So with that, there's a curriculum that has been put together that shows the key things that a community paralegal needs to know to be able to help them to know how to help their community. So with that, we're able to know, okay, so for a community paralegal, you need to know maybe the basic things, the cost structure. You need to know just the general things maybe about criminal law and how to access the courts. You need to know something to do with community building and mobilization. You need to know something. So there's that entire curriculum that is able to guide as we go into training the paralegals so that they can be able to, in turn, train and help or deal with any justice issues that are
prevalent in that
yes,
community.
in that
Emerging in the
community.
community,
And
yes.
just 2 weeks ago, I'm actually currently in the middle of training. We're training paralegals in Kisumu and Vihiga counties. So we have currently a team of 73 who we are training just to be able to deal with those issues.
I'm interested
Yes.
to
Hold
know.
on, City.
You want me to hold on?
Yes.
Consider it
It's
held.
24 to 8. Let's take this quick break, then we continue the conversation. Sylvia Morwabe is the program manager at an organization called Crime C Power. We are talking about accessing to justice, the situation on the ground, working in the communities to access justice, to understand justice and how the justice system works. Time for us to take that quick break, take a look at the weather and traffic. We'll be back shortly. Good morning.
This is the Situation Room.
What I wanted to ask was, when you ask people to apply, what's the response like?
For example, in this last training, I had I sent out.
Okay. How many people did you expect? How many people could you accommodate? What had you factored in as the ideal number of people whom you wanted?
For this training, actually, I was looking forward to around 60.
60.
Yes.
Okay.
I got around 90 responses just to be able to work it out. And then I ended up with, actually, we went through the 90 responses. All of them would have qualified. So like, okay, let's try and accommodate all of them.
Good plan.
And then at the day of the training, I think only 75 showed up. Like, okay, so they've already reduced the number themselves for us.
Yes.
So we're able to do, and they were consistent throughout. We had that first week as physical training, and then we're continuing with the rest as we seek to proceed as online. So it was really overwhelming. I wasn't really expecting them to come out that much as they want to do paralegal studies. But the classes were really interactive. They were really keen on just getting to understand these issues, to get to share what they have been looking at or what they have been dealing with in the communities on a daily basis, and just find answers. And to have just, we had trainers from all over. We had trainers who came from, I mentioned Strathmore Law School as our partner. So we had lecturers from there. We had just advocates from the law firms that we partner with. We had even the judiciary. We had at least the presiding judge from Kisumu to come and just facilitate a session to be able to introduce them to what they do in the court and the work that paralegals are able to help them with in the court. And that was just something to be able to encourage them to understand that the work that they do in just helping people access justice is not in vain.
So is there a beyond to this training?
Yes.
Is the training sufficient only for handling matters within the communities, or is there some sort of certification they can seek so that training can help them beyond the work they do within the communities?
Yes. So the goal is the first goal is especially is just to, of course, help them to be able to help their communities. But as I mentioned, with the Paralegal Society of Kenya, there is certification that at the end of the training where they're able to check and like, okay, you've gone through this training, you have gained skills in this area, and then you can be able to be certified as a paralegal to be able to just have that help your work, so that you're not really tied down to now because I am a member of Kondele or Manyata, that's the only place that I am confined to be able to work with that information or that certificate that I have as a paralegal at the end of the day.
Who is the issuing authority for the certificate?
So right now, okay, because we have the Legal Aid Act 2016. So with the Legal Aid Act 2016, there is the National Legal Aid Service that is set out, or rather set up, as who's supposed to be ensuring that paralegal studies in Kenya, or the paralegal work in Kenya is streamlined. So there's right now the NLAS is supposed to be the the body that offers full certification. So at the moment there's NLAS, there's NPSK, but they are working just to put that streamlined so that we are able to, if you're certified, if you're trained under all this, you're trained under the NPSK and you're able to get that curriculum and manual, then there's just a way that you can be, okay, I don't want to put it as a way, but there is just, how do I put it? Is it not really an exam, but there is a way that they can be able to gauge your training so that you can be able to, it's almost like, let me put it, it's almost
There's
like
a course
LSK.
that when you complete, it allows them to determine
Yes.
your understanding, your
Thank
competence, and so forth.
Yes.
Now, when you've got this certification,
Yes.
does it open the door where one can seek further legal training?
There has been debate on that, actually. I think that's one of that's one of the questions. You see, like the legal profession in this country, to some extent, is threatened by paralegals. To be honest,
Why?
because there's just that feeling that if paralegals are able to do the work that lawyers do, will you need lawyers?
No. You see, it's like saying doctors are threatened by nurses and by clinical officers. They are not. You see, when you assume it's one profession, you go wrong.
True.
Nursing is a completely separate profession from the practice of medicine or being a doctor. As are clinical officers, yes, there are great similarities, but the specific role within that setup, it's not really the same.
Yes.
Now, paralegals have a role.
Yes.
And it's a role that lawyers may think they can actually assent to and may have even accommodated, but there is space for all these other people to work in this. Now, the reason why I ask is this. When you look at the number of people who are looking for an opportunity, not just to be useful, but to earn a living gainfully, when you offer training such as that one, you see, you are offering a course for a paralegal. But the way it's understood in the community, who ni wakili?
Kabisa. So that was just a precursor to my answer.
Yes.
That there has been in the past a little bit of feelings of threatened that, okay, paralegal will come over and take my work as an advocate, and I wouldn't, because it's easier and cheaper to access a paralegal to help with legal work. But in terms of furthering your training, you can be able to maybe go back to campus and be able, though law does not really recognize, bridging that I started if I didn't get the qualification that I started and did a certificate or any. So that usually you can be able to get into a college, be able to do the law. What the trouble will come in at most of the time when you want to get into the Kenya School of Law to get that postgraduate diploma. So usually there are times where they have looked at it and like, okay, maybe you have done this. We can be able to give you a pre-bar exam to allow you to now sit for the advocates training program, and that happens. And actually the Kenya School of Law also has a paralegal training unit, so that they can be able to train and give you certification under the Council of Legal Education as well. So there are opportunities at the moment as to their clear-cutness as of how you can be able to grow into the profession.
It's not clear.
No, but Eric, you see, this is the point. Somebody can actually have a career as a paralegal.
Yes.
Indeed.
Yes. A good one.
Sylvia,
People even work in law firms, yes.
Yes.
Even as we talk about these interventions that are being made at the community level with those who've been involved in crime, you did mention and say that severity of crime is at a 5 in some areas than when it comes to sexual-based violence, gender-based violence. So I'm curious as to the interventions that are being made there. For example, if in the Kondele area you are able to circumvent these issues and say, let's have a chat about why would you be involved in stealing at night, and it's clear that, okay, well, I don't have enough, my parents are making me sell drugs, or I have to be involved in crime because I don't have enough to eat. It's a different kind of crime when it's of sexual nature. How do you intervene in that? Because sometimes we see that sexual crime is coupled with stealing and things like that. But then, from what we've seen and studied from different case studies, that people that are involved in sexual crime are not necessarily doing it because they don't have money. So how do you then intervene in those situations to get these young people to stop?
When it comes to sexual offenses, as you mentioned, the nature is completely different. You can never say that the excuse that I raped someone is because I was hungry. There's no excuse.
Right.
And the one thing that, and as I mentioned, right now it's not even just been rape, it's been defilement. So school-going kids, there's a case that we're currently following up on, one of such issues. And our biggest concern there is to get justice for these victims. Justice for this, for the survivors of such acts. So, like one of the things again is, first, if it's a child involved, involve the children's office, involve the police officers. Let's follow up. Let's first of all remove this person from circulation. Then we can be able to, if there can be we can work on now rehabilitation behind bars and try and see, okay, this was your mindset, but we're not trying to deal with you from outside. That's I think it's one of those things
Sylvia, allow me to intervene and
Yes.
ask this question. In this work that you do,
yes.
these perpetrators of sexual violence, as you call them, what is their understanding of what they are doing? Because when I hear of rape cases, what I'm hearing is a criminal who likes to perpetrate violence, but they've chosen to use sex as the tool for this violence, but it's still violence.
Yes.
Okay? Now, people who perpetrate these crimes, what do they understand to be, when they do it, what do they understand themselves to be doing? I ask this question because it follows that when we talk about gender-based violence, and you ask the perpetrators, what do they understand they are doing? See, there's our interpretation of it, but then there are people who feel, for instance, there are those men who think women shouldn't talk back to them. And they think it is very normal if a woman talks back to you, that the response should be a slap. Now, do you bother to find out how it is these individuals are socialized to the point where they seem to think that these things that they're doing are
okay.
Yeah.
One of the campaigns that we ran most of last year was on SGBV. Our hashtag was SGBV Inatuchuk. And we sat down with communities and we realized, as you mentioned, that a lot of people don't understand even what constitutes sexual violence. First of all, the issue of consent is one that a lot of people still don't understand. There's the issue of, okay, what are the limits? I think people just always want to know is like, okay, what are the limits that I can go to that are permissible, that are permissible before I'm arrested for something.
Right.
And we try to be able to talk to these young men and women to make them understand that these are the constituting factors. That first of all, there has to be, when it comes to sexual and gender-based violence, the one thing that you have to have in mind is consent. And consent, this is the form that it has to be expressed. You can't say that I looked at you, you thought, okay, she's given me permission. So getting them to understand that first. So we've had those conversations. These are conversations that we've not had. We've brought in psychologists because there are things I can't maybe be able to, so that if I can't understand that, if I can't be able to get that psychology, the psychologist can be able to get to understand where these people are coming from and deal with that issues. Now, when we get to a point that we have done all this and someone is still a perpetrator in this case, now we follow up with the law. Like, okay, we gave you the information that you needed to keep out of it. We tried to understand and even bring a psychologist in to help you with the psychology that goes behind it. It still didn't work. So let's deal with it. And as we're dealing with that, we're still trying to get the communities, because we realize even in communities, because I don't know if it's an African or Kenyan culture that we don't like to talk about such things. So that you find instances a girl is raped and you're told, usiseme, it will bring shame to the
It's still
shame
taboo.
to the family. It's still taboo. So it goes, the girl is or whoever is the victim at this point feels like they're the ones who are, you know, on the wrong. And sometimes even we've had instances where the men are like, okay, if a man is the one who was a victim of gender violence, even when they want to report, they're afraid that they will go to the office and be like, hey, mwanaume unachapwa aje. How is that possible? So getting them to understand, first of all, that when it comes to sexual and gender-based violence, it can happen to either gender. And then get them to understand the consequence of it, and then how to act, where to report, what to do, the things to follow through in case you or someone you know is ever in such a situation. And when that situation happens, unfortunately, are we able to now follow up to find justice for the victims?
Okay. I want to go into one question before we conclude the conversation. You mentioned that your organization, Crime Sipoa, was founded by somebody who had been wrongfully incarcerated. And I'm sure through working with the community, you've come across very many cases where people have a negative interaction with the justice system. Wrongful incarceration, harassment by police officers or law enforcement officers, being taken through an injustice throughout the system. How do you deal with such cases? How do you support people who go through such?
Okay. I want to give an example of one of the very first forums that we had was in Kibra in early 2018. I don't know if any of you remember, there was a case of a young man called Carlton Minor.
Yep.
Who had been killed by a police officer at that point, and there was a lot of uproar in the community. And at that point, there was just a dialogue, just to bring in the police, bring in the community, and let's sort our issues. The community is complaining that they feel more unsafe with the police around than when the police are not there. And if we're able to sit down and have this conversation, and we've had these conversations, and the conversation gets heated because the community is feeling aggrieved because they're faced injustice. They feel like they have been just, especially when you go into the informal settlements, they feel that it has been criminalized to be poor.
Yep.
So they're already a target. You're already up to no good by the time you're seeing. So if we've found that in instances where we're able to bring the stakeholders, we're bringing the key players in the justice system, criminal justice system, with the community, we're able to have these conversations. They're able to open up and say, these are the issues that we're facing. This is how we feel you're treating us, and you're not being fair.
And that helps.
That helps because they're able, and the police, we found that, for example, in Kibra, they're able to get to a conclusion where, like, okay, this may have happened. It's not the entire force. It may have been this, but these are the steps we are taking to ensure that going forward, you can trust us. You can be able to walk into the office and know that I'm coming to find help, and not just feel because I've walked into the police station, I'm in trouble, because many people don't know that they can walk into the police station to get help for issues. So when we're able to bring them, we're able to bring that, raise that issue, we're able to bridge that gap. They're able to know, okay, they're accessible. We can be able to talk, they can be able to see where we've gone wrong. We own up also as community where we've gone wrong, and then we're able to start working together towards
harmonious coexistence.
Thank you.
Sylvia,
Exactly.
Thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you, Eric.
Sylvia Morwabe is a program manager at Crime Sipoa. We've been talking about accessing justice at the community level, the various ways in which people get to understand the law, people get to know how to navigate the criminal justice system or just the justice system, and good work that you're doing. Keep doing the good work.
Thank you so much for having me.